Yes.
Okay.
Although, do we have the minutes first, Sam?
Oh, that's right. Can we get the approval of the minutes, a motion? All right, Stace.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, members of the Development Review Board. Sorry for this Rube Goldberg approach to our presentation this evening. We'll see how this goes, but my apologies for not being present. In any case, we're going to go through case number 2227 MS, which is a mountainside case to be located at 6113 East Leisure Lane. It's our Carefree Sentinel Rock Estates subdivision. It's lot 29. The applicant is Mr. Jeremy Gardner of Altitude Design, and I believe the owner, Mr. Mickey Hansen, is present in the audience, but we'll get to him in a moment. Steve, next slide, please. So as I mentioned, this particular lot is located in Carefree Sentinel Rock Estates. You know, we don't see a lot of mountainside cases in this subdivision. However, in this case, it's actually at the base of Black Mountain, and we do tend to see some of those lots tend to fall into our mountainside requirements. As you can see that this one is adjacent to, again, at the base of Black Mountain. And if we could look at the next slide, please, Steve. Contextually, what we find for this particular property is that it's essentially all steep slopes. You probably saw in your packets that in essence, there's no other particular features other than the slopes itself, some protected plants. They did note that there might be some boulders or not too below grade rock formations, but in essence, this steeply sloping site from its northeast to the southwest at Leisure Lane. You will see that this is larger than most typical R135 lots. It's almost about 3 acres. Next slide, please. Excuse me. And so when you look at the slope analysis, you can see that basically the property is pretty equally divided between the 4 slope categories. For the most part, the development envelope sits within basically the middle of the lot, the lower middle portion of the lot. And this was considered in the sense that why not a little bit lower where the slopes are less, but it's very close to the existing neighbor. So the applicant was sensitive to that person and the proposal. Next slide, please, Steve. If you go through our development standards, again, for R135, we have a 20% lot coverage and a 60% lot disturbance. Those requirements have been met. 5.45 lot coverage, 16.59 lot disturbance. And I think due to the large size of the lot, that's why those percentages seem quite small. However, I would say this is an appropriate size development and a typical size development that we would see in R135. The proposal does comply with the setbacks of 40 feet front and rear, 20 on the sides. It also meets the cumulative height requirements of 32 feet, as well as the maximum building height at 17 feet above finished grade. It does meet the town's grading and drainage requirements, as well as the cut and fill ratio requirements, as we see quite a bit more cut than fill. As well as the utilities that will be serviced by the property are Carefree Water, as well as Liberty Utilities for wastewater. Next slide, please. If you just take a quick look at the site plan, just to point out, it is quite a steep driveway, and it has been looked at and reviewed by Rural Metro. What we tend to see, which is we like to see, is that there's not too much disturbance when it comes to the driveway itself. Again, I mentioned it's a reasonably sized home. It steps down the slope with the contours with a southwest facing rear yard with a pool and spa. Next slide, please. When it comes to cumulative height, as I mentioned, it does meet the requirement of less than 40 feet. I think what's important to point out at this particular elevation is that, as you probably saw, which I didn't mention in the site plan, there are the terrace retaining walls, and they look to utilize stone veneer, which I think we believe helps soften sort of its impact of its view from, from other properties. Excuse me. Next slide, please. Uh-oh. So under Development Review Board's purview, we're looking at this based on the environmentally sensitive features, and slopes are considered environmentally sensitive features. Excuse me, I apologize. Again, retaining walls are utilized throughout the development. Again, those are to minimize disturbance, and I think they've done an effective and meaningful job in utilizing those, as well as adding native landscaping. Next slide, please, Steve. So if you look at the landscape plan, basically, it is a tight envelope, which is a good thing. So there is landscaping that's proposed at the disturbed areas, as well as between the terrace retaining walls. There was, as you saw, a landscape salvage plan that was submitted, and those viable plant materials will be reused at the development. So next slide, please, Steve. So with the public process, the citizen participation requirements had been met. You did see in your report that they did receive an email from a neighbor just discussing addresses, which tend to be an issue at Carefree Sentinel Rock, but there were no comments or discussions related to the proposal. So I offer you the conditions for approval that are attached to your report, with one correction. That should say June 10th in terms of the meeting date that the proposal will comply with. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sorry, next slide, Steve. Or the applicant is available to make their presentation as well.
Okay, I do. I have a question. So are you showing on this one page, let's see what sheet it is. It's the one where you just were on it a second ago. Anyway, it shows that you're putting all this vegetation or kind of encasing the driveway and the home area. Is that what's going on there?
Right. Thank you. Yeah. So basically the landscape, again, it does look like it just kind of borders the site development, but that's actually a good thing, because what it's saying is it's re-vegging the areas that have been disturbed on the property. So what it is showing is a very tight building envelope. And so based on how they've designed it, they're not going to need to disturb beyond really the edge of the development itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's not really encased. It's just a matter of revegetation where they're taking out for the pad when they start building. It looks like.
Yeah,
correct?
Exactly. Yeah. And so whatever materials that are that have been noted to be salvaged and reused will be planted within that envelope.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I went over and seen it a couple of times. It's well done for the site. I think that everyone ought to be commended.
It's tight.
It is.
Yeah.
The clearance area around the house makes it, special for us. I worked with John Gunn and Samantha and Stacy last year, and we finished a hillside home there. So I'm really familiar with Sentinel Rock area, the rocks, and I think I know what to expect there.
Yeah.
And hillsides, and so I've experience with that. So I'm looking forward to this project.
Any other questions?
I do have one question. The openings which you've got for the windows, I think there are 4 of them along the back of the property.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they're carefully engineered so that drainage coming straight down off the
Yes.
mountain is not going to come into
There's
the
a whole
windows.
page of drainage
Yeah.
showing all of the underground pipes and
Yeah.
sloped earth. Yeah.
Okay.
The whole idea behind those was to keep the disturbance tight.
Mm-hmm.
We could have laid back 10 feet and then gone up, but then we would be disturbing 10 more
Yeah.
feet in the back. So.
Yeah. But that looks very tight.
Yeah, it's gonna
Yeah.
I thought one thing with a little bit of calming to it, I checked on the lot on the Maricopa County Recorder's page, and they have the address wrong.
Yes, they do, I noticed that,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It doesn't have an address yet because it's for land, so it's adjacent to the address that they're showing,
Yeah,
yeah.
the lot number is correct,
Yes.
but the address is incorrect.
Yeah, so I live at lot 106 right now, which is just only a block away.
Ah,
So it'd be nice to build this one just almost next door, just walk to work.
Any other questions? Anything from the community? Well, in that case, do I have a motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Get to work.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Steve.
Well, I guess that's our planning and zoning meeting. Huh? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, Steve? Huh?
We got 3 more minutes.
Oh. It's actually,
We have to wait till 5:15.
oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Yeah, Commissioner Cross and board members, just wanted to, obviously this is supposed to be a casual conversation about economic development, and it's one of the things that we're building it so we can really have just more of of a discussion in and around the things that relate to economic development. I know a lot of people in the community, excuse me, please.
Huh?
Yeah, sorry. Just, so this is about a casual conversation where we can discuss economic development. And the idea is that this is really geared for you guys to be able to ask questions, be able to really get engaged and involved in the things we want to do. Because when it comes to economic development, one of the things that I think people want to do is just really feel like they are involved, or they had a seat at the table as things are being developed and being put together. And so the idea behind economic, Stacy still on? No. The idea behind the Economic Development Advisory Board is really to create that environment. And so I know it's a little bit different than the way we typically kind of have seen things done, or you really typically see in a community. But when I was in Peoria, we found it to be very effective in that manner. And so I just want to kind of set that framework out. And so for today, what I want to do is make sure that we do periodic updates. People have asked that we do periodic updates on economic development. And then the second item will be to talk about something specific. And we won't get in too much detail on that today, because I know we're not quite ready for that conversation. But what I want to do is talk through with you how we move this forward and how we move these conversations forward when we get to that point. So relating to the first item, which is an economic development update, the big issue that I think everybody wants to know is what's going on the northeast corner of Carefree Highway and Cave Creek Road. And so I apologize we haven't had any updates here lately, but with the public hearings, it was a little bit difficult to try to schedule other things on top of that. As well as I'll be doing another update in the July meeting for council as well. And what's really going on there at this point is that Empire, the owner of the property, is partnered up with another developer, Diversified Partners. They have been, we've talked about this in the past, looking at ways to re-engineer some of the things on the site, and particularly the wash, which has created significant impact and difficulty to build that particular site. We're at a point now where they have completed their engineering, and they're looking at getting costing and pricing from various different contractors, not only for the wash, but all the off-site improvements. We've been working very closely with them and with the water company to identify what those off-sites are for water. They've been working directly with Liberty and all the other private utilities, as well as just looking and working with what it would cost to do not just the site development work, but the ground-up development based around the criteria that's set within the current zoning. So if you look in zoning, and when you do special area planning and zoning, you have to do it with a site plan. And that site plan also comes along with design guidelines and architectural, I say design guidelines, but it comes along with architectural elevations. So there's an idea of what that's going to look like. So they're in that process right now. We are working with them to set up a pre-application meeting, potentially here in the near future, as long as they can get all the documentation and information that's available. And so what's really going to drive this is just as they're going through their leasing, and I know they've been working on that with their brokerage firm. So Diversified is, we'll call them the ground-up developer, with Empire being the site developer. They've been working very diligently in trying to secure tenants for that particular project. And so it's just going to come down to, as they start to look at all the tenancy that they're able to put together for that particular project, and then looking at the costs and seeing how that all comes together. So, you know, we keep being told it's any day now, so hopefully we can get that information within the next week, and hopefully by the next council meeting we'll have a little bit more to share. But I just wanted to get, you guys, and as well as the public, I think, wants to know what's going on that particular site. As far as the CVS goes, at this point, we've thrown a lot of things at it. I think some things have made a run at it. The owner there is only willing to lease. They don't want to own, and a lot of the people who are interested want to purchase it. They don't want to lease it. So we did make a run with Trader Joe's on that. Parking was a specific issue, and so they only had 55 spots, or 55 to 60 spaces, and they have not had success going into old CVS or Walgreens stores, these drugstores, to where parking has become a problem. So if it's part of a larger development, it kind of works, but they just were not. They like the location, but it just wasn't in their planning right now, and so they're just not ready to pull the trigger. We've looked at some other things. People have asked, like, about Total Wine. It's just too small, and it doesn't meet their site criteria. So there's things that we're working on to try to get in there with the broker, who's Eric Butler, and we'll continue. There was somebody who came in the counter the other day who was actually interested in putting a restaurant in there. So you know, we'll keep working at it on that particular site. And then with the town center, you know, this was a good year for our town center. I'm actually putting the numbers together right now for all the traffic data that we got. So as I told you, we had purchased this new system where we can actually track cell phone data, and the cell data will basically give us all the visitation traffic. Doesn't necessarily say people bought things in stores or anything like that, but it at least gives us an idea of who's coming, and then we can look at it specifically, like from which zip codes and what areas they're coming from. And it can actually create a heat map. As a matter of fact, I can see pretty much that, and it doesn't say Mr. Trainer specifically, but he lights up the heat map because he visits the, it's kind of interesting how this data actually works, so it does seem to be fairly accurate. And it does not track people's information. It doesn't track their cell phone or anything like that. It's just a standardized data that allows us to aggregate, you know, kind of where people are coming from. And so we'll start developing how we're going to be able to market for, you know, what types of businesses we want to see here, but also how we can look at market within the area and the region to try to bring visitors to the location so we know where they're coming from or where they tend to come from. So it's been, and once I get a little bit more on that report, I'll be bringing that back to you guys. As far as town center development goes, we're working closely with the Spanish Village folks on some further refinements to the alleyway behind where the Black Mountain coffee shop is, to clean up that alley, as well as fixing up also their dumpster area. One of the things that we are also looking at doing is we're working on the area behind the Shell station and trying to figure out how to deal with that specific property owner. We are working through the legal process to be able to figure out how we can clean that particular site up. If you're not familiar with how that property went through, we'll just kind of explain it, that the original owner of this Shell station, when I started, was Western States Petroleum. And Western States Petroleum sold to another company called Bennett Oil out of California. When Bennett Oil bought it, they actually ended up buying Western States Petroleum, ended up owning these Shell stations. Now, Western States Petroleum really didn't run gas stations. They are a petroleum company, and they develop all kinds of petroleum products outside of just doing gas distribution. And so these were just kind of outliers. The Bennett Oil, when they purchased this particular site as part of the package deal with Western States Petroleum, they actually sold the corner parcel to another partner or another person, and then they leased it back. What they didn't do, though, is they forgot to sell. There's 3 lots there, the 2 lots that have the blighted areas behind it. And so we were trying to figure out a way to work with figuring out how to get this guy to help clean up these particular sites. It turns out that he just turned those over now to the owner of the corner because he didn't want to deal with it, so we're working with them on that. Just to kind of let you know what's going on. It's a little weird, a little crazy, but we're going to try to figure out a way to get rid of that in any way, shape, or we can. And we did declare those buildings as unoccupiable, and through the building department. If you've gone through there, they're unoccupiable, and I think they're going to become a nuisance pretty quickly here, or they've already becoming a nuisance in the town. So it's something that's on the radar to deal with specifically as we look at redevelopment in the town center. So that's kind of the update I have. If there's any additional questions, I just wanted to touch on some of the high points of things we're working on. We actually are working on this parking lot out here as well. The next step, we've reached out to the person who manages it, and what we asked them was, he's the manager, and as part of the contract that we have, as part of this parking lot, that the manager, who is the owner, which is 11 Sundial Circle, is required to maintain that particular piece of property. We're all supposed to contribute. There's supposed to be a capital fund, and none of that obviously has ever happened. And so we're looking at ways that we can get that back on track. And so my next step is to start reaching out to all the different partners that are part of this to get that particular thing, that piece back on track as far as maintenance and lighting. And you know, it's obviously not paved in the way that it's supposed to be. It's not lit the way that it's supposed to be or originally was built. That's supposed to accommodate 106 parking spaces out there. And so with parking being an issue in town, it's one of the things that we definitely are very conscious of as we start looking through and working on the parking plan. With the signage plan kind of behind us now as far as the planning effort, and we'll be bringing that forward as far as actually an implementation step, we still are working on the circulation piece. So we'll continue to have the stakeholder groups, and we're working with Kinley Horn to try to get the next one scheduled. issue being with stakeholder groups in the summertime. A lot of people are out of town, so I got some of the stakeholders saying, who cares? We just want to keep going. And some of the stakeholders are like, well, we really like to participate. So it's just one of those things, you don't want to slow things down in the summer, but we know things slow down in the summer. So with that, are there any questions?
Well, yeah, part of this was discussed about the town hall and.
That'll be the next agenda item.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so this is more on the economic development update, if there's any particular
No,
questions.
It's nice to have an update,
Yep.
yes.
On the Shell station, cleaning up anywhere around there, are there some serious environmental issues because of the underground tanks and potential leakage into either the existing lot where they're located or neighboring lots?
So it's one of the things I've been looking into. It looks like there was a remediation plan that had been completed at one point. So there could be. I haven't seen any of the phase 1 or phase 2 plans yet. I take that back. In fact, I think I saw phase 1, but I haven't seen any kind of phase 2 on it. So I'm looking at what potential remediation has been completed or what plan has been put in place.
Right.
Well, I'm going to move this over so people know we're on this. And so we're looking into that. That's a good question. And so it's just one of those things. We just need to get the information from the property owner, and the property owner was pretty hard to nail down.
So there's already been a phase 1 and phase 2 environmental?
I think there has been, and I think there's already been a remediation, and I think the tanks were already dealt with a while back. I just don't know where in process any remediation, if it's been completed, where that sits. And so then if I don't get anything directly from the property owner, which we're having a difficult time nailing down, is to go to the Department of Environmental Quality and see if there's anything that they have on the site.
What about the loss of Ace Hardware? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So, yeah, I mean, I don't think they've officially announced, and so I don't know how comfortable I am saying without Dave putting out any kind of official proposal, but, this is just one of the things is you have a vacant store that's been sitting there forever, and at some point they're gonna be taking measures to try to get tenants in there, and if you look at Dave's existing store over in Tatum Ranch, it's twice the size of the store here, and I think there's been an attempt to try to figure out a way to stay in place, but if you look at how that site's developed, the Bash just sits at one level, the A store comes down about another 2 to 3 feet, and then the next space comes down another 2 to 3 feet. He's at 8,000 square feet there. If you're gonna move, it makes sense to go to double that store size. And I'm sure there's a deal that was on the table that was pretty hard to refuse, so.
I guess I was thinking more replacement than,
Oh, the replacement?
yeah.
So the Brian Coker, who was the broker on that site, is no longer the broker, so they just hired a new company that we'll be working with. What I need to find out is if the situation for, if he still has a lease, right? And then are we working on a subtenancy situation? So those are the details we just need to work out. I don't have all the details because he hasn't officially announced yet. But yeah, we'll be working, and so what the mayor has asked me to do is, once we get the opportunity, we'll put a strategy together for that. We'll bring that back to you guys too.
So Ace is not officially announced?
I haven't seen their press release yet,
Okay.
Who?
Ace
Ace
Hardware.
Hardware.
Oh,
but word seems to get out faster than press releases sometimes, so.
I missed part of that. Didn't
It's
hear.
certainly been on his social media, on Ace Hardware's social media.
Has it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so they were gonna officially,
Oh, they
I
are?
know they had asked us to put
I
together
didn't
some
know
stuff,
that.
so. That's why, I mean, I know it's out there, so I'm not afraid to talk about it, but I don't wanna put words in their mouth.
They announced their new location as well on the same
Yeah.
post.
Yeah,
Yeah.
did they put it on their post?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes, yeah.
yeah,
It was
Except
Ace
that's-
Hardware's post or somebody else's post?
Ace Hardware's,
yeah.
Except that corner's not carefree.
yeah, exactly.
No, it's
No.
Scottsdale.
I know.
So, they've been a
Gee,
good partner. I
Might
have
need a
nothing bad to
special planning area for that corner. I got a couple of questions for you. You say that they finished the engineering on the northeast corner for the wash?
From what I understand, that they've completed the engineering on that, yeah, and they're out for pricing right now.
What are the takeaways on that? Can the wash be
Yeah, so the
shrunk?
takeaways is that they came to us and asked, and with that concept that perhaps that the flow in that wash was significantly less today than it was when they did the original engineering. She said, so they went and they spent the money, did the study on that. The study that they received came back and showed that it did have less flow, and a lot of that was probably attributed to development upstream. And as things developed upstream, they were having on-site requirements for water retention, which minimized the amount of water that was being put in it during a rain event. It still doesn't minimize the fact that it still has to go through a pipe and go under Cave Creek Road, but it does minimize the amount of water that comes there at a given time, and the flow rates. And so it did have from what we understand, it did have an impact to some extent on what is necessary. And so what they're trying to figure out is really the total financial change from what it was originally to where it is today to redo the wash.
It did have a positive impact on.
I think it has. They haven't shown me the numbers yet, so we're
Okay.
just waiting for that. Pretty much calling about every other day to, hey, guys.
What's the ingress and egress gonna be on that corner?
I'd have to go back and get the site plan out.
Will it be both sides?
Yeah, oh yeah, they'll have ingress on Cave Creek and off of, Carefree Highway. I mean, it's a large site, yeah.
On the signage plan, that has come out of a citizens committee and gone back and been adopted by what's the status of that?
So the signage plan, yes, it came out of the stakeholder group,
Right.
and it was presented at town council, and the signage plan was approved. As part of that approval, the original estimates were reduced down significantly. I think it was we were like at 1.2 million for the total package, and that got reduced down to I can't remember now, 600 or something like that, or 500 and some thousand. But really, that was based on what they had originally proposed. Where we're at now is just really just settling on a first phase, and or not first phase, an installation. And, with the idea of that's what's suitable for today. If things change in the town center, let's say things add on an infill basis, or, like in redevelopment, like we're gonna be talking about today, maybe there's an opportunity to start to reevaluate if there's additional signage needed in the future, and that came in at about 350,000 as far as a budgetary number. So the next steps is that we're going to be working on getting the documentation together so we can start to go out to bid. Gilbert actually just went through this whole entire process. They're just probably about a few months ahead of us, and so they're going to be sharing their documents for what they put out for construction and installation.
Anything else?
I got one other question. I've asked you this about, at the post office, that facility to the right that looks like they're using it as storage, they're out of compliance. Anything you can do there, anything we can hope for?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the things I've been asked to do in general is take the information that, and I'm gonna, from when we did the economic opportunities, when Peter did his presentation on the revenue, I did the opportunity report, and what we were looking at was where are we missing on our abilities to expand or fully capture the retail that we can in the town center. And as part of that, we start looking at spaces like that. And so, yes, we're going to be addressing those, but when we start looking at how we're going to address specific spaces, we need to be fair and equitable in how we do that. So what I have been going through is documenting every single retail space and every single retail building in the town center area. And so I will be putting a report together that looks specifically at all that, and then making recommendations on how we can approach those types of uses. So in a case like that, or there's other cases where a business comes in and they're doing a specific type of business, where they put on their business license, yes, this is the business I'm gonna do, but they don't actually do that, right? So like the biggest complaint I get is the Free Spirit Gallery right next to venues. That they came in, they were supposed to originally be a financial office, then it was gonna be a store, a shop, but in essence, it's never been open a day. So, and it's been in the 4 years. And so, how do we deal with spaces like that? But at the same time, they're not the only ones that are doing it, right? There's other locations. And so what we want to do is identify all of that. So I'll be bringing that back to you guys as a report. And I'm hoping to get it to you in July if I can, because I think it's important that we start discussing that, because that feeds into our ordinances. It's gonna feed into how we handle issues as far as code enforcement. You know, are there things that we're not doing or we should be doing, or are there things that we can't do because we don't have the ability to do them? And so we'll be looking at those as well as taking that into a design guideline conversation and looking at the foundational things that prevent this from happening in altogether.
I guess my question is, so we don't at this time have the ability to shut that down and say, okay, you're out of compliance, we need you to move on and we'll bring in somebody in compliance?
So at this point, I think we could have, I don't know, that's what we're looking into right now, is as we examine what those codes and what our enforcement capabilities are. You know, what happens is, you know, you have a business that says, okay, well, I'm open by appointment only. So how do you deal with that, right? Well, we're open for special events, but I've never seen a special event in there. So, but now you got to document, okay, how long does it take you to document that they don't do special events or they're not doing special appointments? You know, and so I think there's ways that people are trying to get around these specific code issues, you know, and then you have to verify that, you know, they're actually conducting some kind of wholesale business out of there. You know, it could be, they're just storing stuff in there. You're not allowed to do that either, right? You can't.
That's what they seem to be doing.
Yeah, and so those are the things that we are specifically looking at. That's one of the sites on the list that I'm talking about. And so to give you an example, even with Carefree Distillery, you know, we were looking at whether or not having warehouses is something. And so, you know, but originally they had a tasting room, and so I went and had a conversation with them and said, you kind of need to start putting the tasting room back on the table. I get it, COVID hit and all that, but it's a retail building. And so those are the things that we're looking at. You know, at the same time, we don't want to penalize good people, but at the same time, we want to bring things along that are positives, but if something is just unattainable and a negative and they're looking to not comply,
Right.
we got to find ways to deal with that. So we're going to be tackling that as a group. That's one of the conversations. But again, it's one of those things that I don't want anybody to feel like we're singling them out, because they're always, I'll tell you right now, like we just went out with the feather banners that have all been around, and Stacy ended up wanted to send out, somebody complained about one, and I said, well, if you're going to send a letter out to somebody who has a feather banner, you got to send them to all of them. All the feather banners need to go. This is a good time to do it anyhow, because nobody likes them anyway. So, you know, on a permanent basis. And so she did that, and it went out equitably to everybody. And so nobody felt like they were singled out, where they were going to call up and say, well, now I want to complain about so-and-so's banner. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. And what I want to do is have a thoughtful way of doing this and addressing it. Part of the issues that we have is just the way that we capture information and we do licensing and permitting. I mean, we're still on analog. I mean, we're working with paper and goldenrod copies, and I'm like, the rest of the world's like on, you know, we're on 8 tracks and the rest of the world is doing digital music. You know, it's just, we got to start figuring out ways we're going to do that. So I know that that's something that we're addressing right now, because then it makes it easier to capture that data and information, and we can address it. Right now we have facts and data that support everything. One of the issues that we have is, you know, people feeling they get a business license and they open up a business, but they never got their certificate of occupancy to actually occupy the space, and they didn't get permits for the work that they did. So we're working closely with the building safety department and with the fire department to figure out how to prevent that, make sure that we have safe spaces and people are getting the proper certificates of occupancy. And at the same time, people who didn't comply, making sure that, like, if a business went in and decided to paint their building and then painted right over their fire sprinklers, well, that's a problem. So, you know, how do we then do fire inspections to make sure that these spaces are safe and that the tenants that are next door to these spaces are safe from the activities of people who aren't doing things right? So those are the things we're specifically tackling right now. And I said I'll bring this report back I'm hoping to bring it back fairly soon, where we can have this conversation, because this is an extremely important one, and I'm glad you brought it up. And it's not just that space. There's a lot of them, and I think we should be dealing with it holistically, because we really want to maximize the retail opportunity that we have in our retail space. You know, and I was saying like Easy Street and Spanish Village and that area there. And there's a lot of things that are impacting that.
One more question on Ace Hardware, Karstens. Will you ask them, their sales tax returns are proprietary information, private information, But will you ask them if they will share with the town what their total sales tax payments have been to the town for the last couple, 3, 4 years?
I can ask.
Well,
Yeah.
that's all we can do.
Yeah.
All they can do is say no. But
Right.
if we don't ask, we won't get it. But I would like to get a better sense of how big a hole them, and this is a done deal as far as you know?
As far as I know, they're pretty darn close. If it not done deal, yes.
They sent out yesterday a huge press release.
Oh, so they sent it out? Okay.
Sent it
I haven't
out
seen it yet.
yesterday. It's online and it's huge. All the relocation details, when they're gonna have their store opening detail.
Yeah, so I appreciate that, yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't get it, but it went out last and.
Can you download that and share it with the P&Z here?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't see it anywhere.
And then follow up with them and get an idea of how big a hole we're looking at.
Yep, I'll do that.
Anything else? Guess not.
So, going to the second agenda item, and this is, we had that initial presentation and then talked about the criteria potentially for a request for proposal. Let's see what's going on. As we look at the redevelopment potential for the town hall site. And so what I wanted to do is that there was an RFP that had been put together a long time ago for that site. So I kind of took that, I took some RFP information that I got from communities around. And so what I wanted to do is just get you guys a draft. And at this point, I mean, I'm sure you didn't take a look at it. I didn't get any comments back on the criteria that we talked about the first time. That's okay. I mean, I get it. We're kind of getting into a process, and what I'd like to do is I don't necessarily find that this format may be the most productive way for us to have this conversation. So I'm going to try to work on a better way for us to have a working conversation about this, and one that maybe the residents have an opportunity to listen in on and maybe even participate at some level to make comments, because it is something that's probably very visible, very important, and it's a key site for the town center. And so with that, the things that I would really like to focus on as we put that together, I want to, get your permission to say if that's what you'd like to do in the future here at one of the next meeting or two, or we can maybe set up a special date to have this specific conversation so we're not mixing it with other business. But to just specifically talk about this, I can put some boards together that have some, visuals and some other things that we can talk from and kind of get that conversation started. And really what we'd look at is if we were to redevelop the site, what type of criteria would we want to look at? What is it we'd like to see? Types of uses, types of users, building heights, densities, all of those things. So those things are addressed in this specific draft document. If anybody wants a copy, does anybody want a copy to look at? I made extras just in case. So the idea is that this conversation, and then from there, what I'd like to talk about is the process. So this would then look at, how do we want to engage the public? Let's set some target dates for when we want to get some things complete based on how we want this process to go through the public and vetting process. And then, again, talk about design elements. Obviously, there's a lot of people who don't specifically think that the hotel is great design. I wanted to make sure that whatever we do here, everybody's happy with. It should be something that we should be proud of. And then again, it's just then looking at how we handle the opportunity for relocating town hall, types of where we would like to go, what makes sense, how can we financially put something together that would make sense for a developer. At some point, I would actually, as part of this discussion, we would be reaching out to developers, and I could actually even see me even putting a stakeholder group together like we did for signage, to maybe even vet a little bit of this, and maybe that's something that we talk about as a group, and we say, hey, let's do that, right? Let's see if we can get that put together, and then have some kind of, group that reports back to you guys, or maybe council. But I like this format here. So again, it's just more about creating this environment that allows us to have discussions around these specific topics without us, you guys get a bunch of information, and it just seems like all of a sudden we're at a decision point. I really want to take this through its paces. I think it's extremely important, and I don't want anybody to be surprised. And there's no reason why we can't discuss a document like this in public, because it's a public document. And eventually, the more we talk about it, the more people are gonna start hearing about it, and the more developers and others start hearing about it, well, it's just to our benefit
Yeah.
that they know it's on the radar as part of the discussion. So, and I just want, whenever we send this out, I want it to be clear as to what it is we want, and that it's clear as to how the process is gonna be when we do the evaluation, and then eventually it makes some type of decision.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think anybody's prepared to talk about it, unless somebody's got questions.
I do. What kind of interest do you think there's going to be in this?
I think there's gonna be some decent interest in it. Yeah.
Right now, if you were to guess, how many responses to the RFP would you have?
I think right now I could probably get like 3 good ones. But I want more than that. I want this to be really kind of a known product. I mean, there is somebody who's been asking to get it out. And so, you know, because they've got a great idea on how this can all be put together functionally, but, you know, I don't want to limit us, so.
I'm just curious as to whether you should consider this to be a 2-round proposal. Because, and I just skimmed this, we just got this, and I just skimmed it, but some of the submissions that you're asking for, in terms of a site plan and, right?
Mhm.
You were going into some detail, as I recall. I'm just wondering if you ought to have at some level, some kind of concept and then some qualifying criteria for the proposers. And then you get it down to 2 or 3 before you have them engage in the next level of, you know, iterations on that after a back and forth process, maybe.
Yeah, so
I'm asking.
no, that's a good question, and I think that's one of the discussions that we should have, is there's 2 ways to go about this. You can go out for an RFQ, and that's what I think you're more talking about, is finding qualified developers who'd be interested in doing this project, and then asking those qualified developers to submit proposals, or selecting a lot of times what you do is you select a qualified developer that you like, and you've just defined, and then you let them tell you what they're gonna do, right? You're working it from that perspective, a 2-phase approach. Or in a case, you can define clearly what it is you want.
Well, I don't think that we're in a position to define clearly what we want and all of the possible options that there could be.
Right.
I mean, that's,
So that's the conversation, I think, think about that and how we would like to approach this.
Well, I had a thought or two just driving around there. You were talking about this parking lot out here earlier. You know, and you look at that series of buildings over the extreme east side over there, and to walk up, they're not stairs. You know, half of that would be ideal for the town hall with a real life parking lot. I mean, you could have the engineering section of one, you know, city office in another, and plenty of parking, and just do that first, and then you can deal with redeveloping what was at that time the former town hall.
Yeah, so some of the issues that we'll have to think about is kind of how cash flow works and,
Yeah.
and how you pay for things. So, you know, if you're in a situation where you're buying something, you know, we're not gonna lease, I don't think, as a town. I
Yeah.
don't think there's any interest in that. So
No.
if we're purchasing something, then we're spending money before we sell, right? And so now we've got this issue where we spent money on the bet that we're gonna be selling something. And so are we comfortable with doing that, you know, as far
Yeah.
as a recommendation that we wanna look at? That's a good question. I mean, these are the conversations we really need to have, yeah.
Well, I think we just need to be prepared, 'cause I hadn't seen this before either, and then sit down and say, okay, this is what the meeting's gonna be about.
Yeah, I just needed to give you something, we just need a
Yeah.
starting point, and so I just gave you a document to start from.
Well, I got 2 citizens out here who would like to speak to us.
Yeah,
Are
okay.
we
Well,
done?
so we're on the agenda item, so if they want to speak to the agenda item, then that's what,
Both cases, yes.
or for this specific agenda item?
Looks like it,
Okay,
yeah. Agenda item number 2.
okay.
Who's first here? Is it Jim or Jan? Neil? Jan. You get it.
I
180
was
seconds.
finishing writing my notes. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jan Neal, P.O. Box 878 in Carefree. So the first thing that comes to mind, and I apologize for being late. I had another engagement. I look at many things from this perspective of customers. Who is my customer? Who is a customer? Et cetera. And so when I think of the whole retention issue, and I guess my question about Ace Hardware, and again, I apologize, I was late. Was this a surprise? Did we know that they were thinking of pulling out?
Did we know they were pulling out?
Did we know that they were thinking or planning of pulling out?
You know, I mean, Dave has talked about it over time, and so did he approach us to let us know ahead of time? Yes, he did.
Okay. So, you know, once we lose them, we never get them back. So I look at the retailers and those that we gain sales tax revenue from as our customers. Now, is it a traditional customer? No, I come from the IT standpoint, 35, 40 years immersed in taking care of customers, executive customers. So I had to crawl in their heads and think what they were thinking before they said it, as well as engineers and everyone down the line. So what is our relationship with our retailers? How well do we know them? What kind of relationship? Is it a partnership? Is it a relationship where we're the town and you're the retailer? I would just ask us to think and ask ourselves, I'm not saying we need it, but do we need any kind of an attitude adjustment relative to our retailers? So that would be something I would leave with you. And I think a top priority is this whole retention. The development of the northeast corner, I know everybody's tired of hearing about it. Prime sales tax opportunity. And the last thing is, with all due respect, over the last couple of years, what have we really accomplished with regard to economic development? What have we really accomplished? Are we talking about the same things over and over and over again? So I'll leave you with all that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker I have on there is John Mattis.
Good evening. John Mattis, P.O. Box 6133, Carefree, Arizona. I believe we're putting the cart before the horse. We're talking about a new town hall where we have a giant room above us. Steve occupies that. How about partitioning off for rooms? You have a bathroom downstairs. You have a meeting room downstairs. Why are we looking at spending money? I read an article today, and I'm not an economist. I know Ms. Smith is, and I know that Diane is. Although the top economist predicts a crash of a lifetime, worse than 2008 recession. You can just keep printing money just so long and keep spending money you don't have. What happened 50 years ago yesterday? Did anyone know that we are no longer having a petrodollar? Do anyone know that Saudi Arabia is not selling oil in dollars anymore? That happened yesterday. They're going to yuan, they're going to gold-backed currency. What a concept. And we're looking to spend money we don't have. And what's going to replace it? We already know, there's news to me tonight, Ace Hardware's moving out. That was a good question that Mr. Burns brought up. What are we looking at in sales tax revenue? Loss. Yet we're looking to spend money. Do you think possibly the residents should be asked before you even start talking about acquiring a new location for a town hall? Do you want that? And what else could we do? I gave you an option. Upstairs. There's no reason that couldn't be split up, and anybody who has room, needs room, could go upstairs. There's no reason to go buy or look for developers, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, these are open topics as part of the conversation. I mean, that's to the point, right? There's no decision has been made on what happens, and so discussing existing space and looking at this particular facility here is definitely on the table. So I appreciate that. And you know, to Ms. Neal's comment, you know, obviously retention is important to us, and at the end of the day, businesses are going to make the best decisions for businesses. Just because we want sales tax doesn't mean that they necessarily think that being here might be the best thing for them in a changing marketplace. And so we'll continue to figure out ways to backfill space. Ms. Neal, I think of the relationship with our businesses is fairly good. And so did we know Dave? Yeah, I knew Dave pretty well. You know, just to give you an idea, we've actually have met with Lowe's as well, because obviously you just have concerns about your larger employers, making sure that they're healthy and they're happy. And you know, our conversation with Lowe's was extremely good. Both John Crane and I met with them. And so we'll continue to have these specific conversations, particularly with our larger employers, to make sure that that we're doing everything we can on our end to make sure. But at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff's going to be market driven, and it's the challenge we have in a sales tax driven environment. You know, to Mr. Mattis's point, we're at the whim of the economy. We're at the whim of macro, micro, and all kinds of things that are happening in and around us, economics. And so we will do our best to deal with these things. And so, again, this is a forum, and I'm gonna tell you right now, I hate the dynamic of you guys having to come up and stand here and all that. I mean, I'd rather just give you a mic and pass it around and find a way for us to get together and just have this discussion, because I think it's long overdue that we start talking about these things. And so I'm really trying to break the ice on that with you guys, and I hope that we can, with this particular project here, take a step back, take a breath, and do this the way that I think everybody in the community wants to get it done, so everybody feels like Mr. Mattis can make a comment and feel like they're contributing as part of the conversation. So, so to that.
Well, I have one more speaker
Yeah.
request.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Diane?
Howdy, Diane Roth, 1004 Boulder Drive.
Get closer to the speaker, please.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yep.
I feel like a AT&T commercial, or was that Verizon? Verizon, right? So I'm sitting here listening to this, and why are we talking about a new town hall? I mean, I'm confused. Don't we need to focus on CVS, the northeast corner? We've lost Ace Hardware, and now there's a whole plan for the southeast corner in front of Walmart. It's not us, but it's a competitor to us. They have it platted out, and apparently they've got anchor stores. And why are we behind the ball? Why are we we lost Sprouts? So I think we should focus on the properties we have and not pie in the sky town hall. To me, that's not going to unite people. It's going to divide people. People want to see the northeast corner, which is our money shot, developed, CVS filled, and now we're going to need Ace Hardware filled. So, I mean, I think we've got to get our priorities lined up and go with where are we going to get the sales tax and the most dollars, Cave Creek Road, and the economy can get. My sister and I bought a property in 2000. We went through 2008, where all of you, I'm sure, did. Properties were here, value, then they were in the basement. That can happen again. So I think let's focus on what we have and not trying to think of ways to spend money on stuff we don't need right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Ross, thanks. I appreciate the comment. We actually have the town hall site, and it's not about relocation of town hall necessarily, but it's more about what the opportunity the town hall presents. And so as we look at a comprehensive program, I mean, I think personally, I think it would be short-sighted for us to look at things on a very linear basis. I mean, I think, you know, so what's going to happen is, well, why don't we think of this? Why don't we do this? So the idea is how do we get these things in moving along in different paths? You know, there's no decision yet being made here. It's just how can we evaluate an opportunity that we have complete control over, where we could potentially put something that generates zero revenue, that has little value to the town center, and be able to put that in better production for a type of use that's going to be very compatible with making the entire town center. So again, it's really about, you know, and again, it's about bringing people to the table to have this discussion. And I really want everybody's opinion and thoughts and input on how we can get there. It's looking at the northeast corner and how that fits into the overall structure. It's about how we're going to be able to deal with backfilling spaces when people make business decisions like Dave Karsten did. And it's just, you know, for me, it's about how do we get people together, how do we come together, and we start having these conversations. And we might have various viewpoints that other people may just not necessarily thought of. But, you know, and I think what I hear from residents, and this is my God's, I just feel like you guys tell me, nobody listened to us. Nobody heard me. I got great ideas. I want to hear your great ideas. I want to listen to you. I mean, that's what this is about. So, you know, it's what have you done for me lately? But yet the next comment is why are we even doing this at all, right? So it's one of those things. Where's the happy medium of getting things done? So how do we get these conversations moving at a pace that's appropriate for that particular conversation? So are we going to race on the town hall site? No, because I think a lot of people have a lot of opinions on what it could or should be. But should we do something with it? I think at the end of the day, everybody agrees it's probably the right thing to do, right? Yeah. And so let's not do it, but at the same time, let's not do it at the expense of not doing something else. So those are the things. And so when you look at a comprehensive program in IT, you didn't just, I hate that thing. In IT, you didn't just go, okay, we're going to roll out security, right? And then next year we're going to talk about how we're going to do, you have a comprehensive plan about all these various different things, and they're in different stages, right?
A plan and priorities. You can't work on everything at the same time. So when we talk about a possible new town hall, that dilutes effort from other things. So what I would say is there needs to be 3 priorities or a few priorities, and bam, go for them and put your effort towards them. I also have a project management background, so, you know, when we're talking about priorities and plans and things like that. So that's why I get a little crazy on some of this stuff when I come up and talk, because of my perspective.
Yeah, so this isn't, I don't know if we'll call it a priority. What I'll say is that it's a high profile discussion, right? So there's other things that are priorities as well, right? We want to clean up some of the blight around here, so we're working on that. It's a little sensitive, though, to talk about that stuff, and be honest with you. And so we're, sorry, I just can't see you over there. And so, you know, it's just, how do we get to this place where we can actually have just really good dialogue about the various different things that people bring up and the various different things that, you know, I get complaints about all kinds of stuff. There's a community that wants to do all kinds of things that they think are our priority. And so obviously we have to distill that down to what our specific priorities. You know, it's very clear, the northeast corner is a priority. Working very diligently with both Empire and Diversified. So we work with them very closely, but you know, I mean, doesn't take that much time to figure out, to sit there and wait around where they're gonna give me, to tell me how much it costs to build, right? So there's things that we could be doing that are in between, you know. So that's what I'm getting at, and the other side of it is yeah, I'm one guy. So how do you expand the conversation, get more people involved with an economic development advisory? How do we bring more residents in? This is really the goal, is to allow the residents to be part of the process, right? And to allow the residents to be able to say, yeah, so I don't want to tell you what to do over here. I want you guys to tell me, as a collective, what do we do with a site like that? What would be like the home run for a site like that? But we work it together, and if the conversation takes another 8 months, it takes 8 months. I mean, nobody's in a rush. And so, but at the same time, if we waited 8 months to start talking about it, people are gonna go, well, why weren't you talking about it 8 months ago, right? So that's kind of where I'm trying to get to is we can, I have an amount of capacity that I can handle.
Right.
Stacy has an amount of capacity that she can handle. So in a community like this, and I'm telling you, when I took the job, I was really hopeful that I could find, it's a small community, people who were really invested and interested in what they want to see, to come in and be a part of that conversation and say, I want to be a part of this. And so,
what about having a roundtable?
Yeah.
Start out by having an economic development roundtable. things just don't go wonky, you know, every direction. But, you know, start out with something like that. You know what, the worst thing that happens is it fails and you go, it didn't work.
Well,
Is that-
we need to look forward to, you know, all this information out and then have an intelligent conversation. But just like the town hall, I mean, the existing town hall site, we don't know exactly, but it's worth, in terms of retail, it's worth some pretty decent money and probably enough money to buy into something that's already built and remodeled. But we don't know that precisely.
Right, and so we can set parameters like saying, well, look, we really don't want this to cost us anything out of pocket, right?
Yeah,
Is there a way to do that where we get paid and whatever gets done is a wash or maybe even a net benefit
yeah.
at some level? So those are the things that we just need to evaluate. But Ms. Neal brings up a good point, and that's actually the whole purpose. Ms. Neal, the purpose of the economic development plan is really to have that roundtable conversation. It's just that,
Steve, we have someone else who'd like to speak also.
oh, we got another one?
Yes.
Oh.
Mr. Trainer?
Maybe he'll solve all the problems.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, is it working?
No.
Not yet. No.
New batteries.
Hello? Mr. Commissioner, members of the commission, John Trainer, PO Box 2014, thank you very much.
You're okay.
That was great. Let them eat cake. Let them eat cake. Think about that. Why? I will tell you that this is not a new idea, not by a long shot. In the financial planning committee that was thrown to the curb by the former mayor, and my unremarkable contribution to that committee, I will tell you that for 2.5 years, I listened to a lot of talk. Part of that talk was, what do we do with this wonderful site that should be something else? We just bought it, we refinanced it, had to pay a pre-termination fee, then we refinanced it a second time, and it's still here. We talked about a chef-led or a chef-inspired business there. That's a great idea. What happened? Nothing. Why did it come up now? I have a theory. The theory is, we're hearing a lot about that northwest corner. We're hearing a lot of static about that northeast corner. Not a lot of progress, but we're hearing a lot of stuff from the neighbors. Let's give them something else to chew on. Let's give them something else to complain about. Well, I can tell you, I'm all in favor of having a great restaurant, a chef-inspired restaurant, right here in Gifford. It didn't happen, how many years ago? That was circa 14 to 16. It didn't happen then. It's not gonna happen now. I hope it does, but I don't think it will. So if you wanna waste your time and waste residents' time, we'll let you do that because we won't waste our time. We're still gonna focus on the northeast corner. Now we have competition, huge competition from Cape. We deserve that. We sat on our butts for a very, very long time. A lot of talk, a lot of we can't, we this, we that. Hasn't happened. If it never gets filled, we're in good shape. Thank you. Let them eat cake.
Well, it's up to you guys how you want to proceed on this. Obviously, the idea is to get these things out there and have these conversations. You know, I don't think there's any problem. I mean, we've been talking about this site for a while, and it's one of those things where we've slowed the roll for the very reason that everybody's bringing up, that we didn't want to feel like nobody had a part in the discussion on what to go there. Chef-driven restaurant, I think would be great. Does everybody else think that's going to be great? You know, I think that's when you look at this document, that's what we're looking for, is more of some type of restaurant. And so that is the things that we've heard and we've listened to, but,
Just say something.
yeah.
Restaurants have the highest failure rate in this country of any business, better than 85%. Retail is the second highest, which I'm very familiar with. It's like 82%. So we're looking to
even if you get someone to buy into that, there's such a long lead time before they buy it, you will have to move out, they've got to renovate, they've got to meet all the new codes, you know, for gas stoves, for redoing a kitchen, for fire, and then they've got to find people that are gonna come. And I was just reading today in the Wall Street Journal, there are a couple big restaurants, 7 months gone. Is right now the climate for restaurants couldn't be worse, as the retail climate is really iffy. So why are you trying to do something there with businesses that have huge failure rates? So you might as well go to Vegas and gamble the money there. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
I mean, you can talk to the guy who's sitting next to you, who just said he wanted a chef-driven restaurant. So, again, we're at a place right here where it's, you know, this is about the,
Let me substitute
yeah,
a word. A successful chef-inspired restaurant.
okay. But what I'm talking about here is you know, I feel the anger, right? I mean, I get the anger you guys here. We've got to, yeah, or frustration. I sense the frustration, which is why, and I'm glad I hope you guys are okay with having this conversation. I mean, because I think it's
Well,
important.
I think we're headed the right direction. What we ought to do is, as opposed to making this like a planning and zoning meeting, we sit down with an open discussion.
Absolutely.
Without.
That's what I was talking about. See, now you understand why I think it's
And-
good for us to get down from here,
Yeah.
get away from this, and get these chairs situated so we can all look at each other in the face and talk to each other.
Right.
And I think the point is in any economic development review, and what you're saying is, there are certainly issues of immediate concern, such as refilling CVS, refilling ACE, but there are longer-term issues, and we don't start talking about the longer-term issues just when they become immediate. We start thinking about them now. Where are the opportunities for growth and development for this town? And I think we're looking at the idea of the town hall site simply as a high-profile area that may have possibilities. So we should consider it, we should talk with the residents. We're not locking into a restaurant or a retail establishment. We're looking at what are the possibilities long-term for growth there that will provide revenue to the town.
Correct.
You got, we're getting away from what would be the organized meeting, which is how we started off, and getting into an open discussion type thing. I mean, if you want to speak, fill out the form, please.
Well, so I guess that what I would like to do is I mean, we have we got the speaker forum thing and all that other stuff, and I get it, we're in a formal meeting. What I
We need
would
to
like,
look at something that's more like an open
what I'd like to
discussion
recommend
meeting.
is that if you're comfortable with it, that we'll put together, and I'll have to sit down and figure out how we get the microphones and the live streaming and all
Yeah.
that other stuff to work. But if you guys are comfortable with it, I want to create a situation where we can have this discussion. And maybe the first discussion isn't about the town hall. Maybe the first discussion is just how do we want to engage economic development, to Ms. Neal's, and talk about these specific issues. But then say, okay, well, what's the best process for us to be able, because I really want, I'm telling you, I'm just going to lay it out there right now. When I listen to the frustration of this community, I get it. I get that people feel that even though we've got processes in place, they don't trust them for whatever reason. And it could be, it's not the town, it's not the people. It could just be the process just needs to be fixed. You know, maybe we're dealing with processes that are 30 years old. I don't know. But I think we need to start examining this and trying to recreate this. I mean, I look at this room and I'm like, sorry, I'm pulling a moment here. I look at this room and I think it's so dysfunctional. Your residents, they're residents. What's the deal with does anybody like this dynamic? No, nobody likes this dynamic, do they? I don't. Right, this should be a workroom with electronic whiteboards where we can spitball ideas and get together. We're a small town. We're not Phoenix.
Well, how about if we listen to Arian real quick?
Yeah. Sorry, it just drives me crazy. No, just stand right there because the microphone's not even working.
Hi. Okay, I will. No problem. That's never a problem for me. That's for sure. Arian Buser, Carefree resident. I guess and I apologize for being late. I had another commitment before this.
Don't ever let it happen again.
I will. I do apologize. I feel like I missed a lot of good conversation, but still needs to be filled, northeast corner, we all know that's a hot topic. So I guess I'm just wondering, actually, point of interest on my end is what is the town doing to be welcoming to new businesses so that they want to come and start their business here? But, I mean, because to Diane's point, a restaurant, yeah, we've all, especially coming from California and other places, we all know that they start off really hot, sure, it's the hottest thing, and then they go out of business a few months later. Especially with the cost of food now, with inflation, honestly, it would be very hard to get a successful restaurant up and running unless it had a really, really big draw. And you talk about chef inspired. Well, who is that chef? Is there someone that's expressing interest? So that's what I'm kind of feeling like there's a shiny ball syndrome. Like, we don't know what's happening with the northeast corner and the northwest corner. We all know that is really a hot topic right now based on last week's meeting. But now let's focus now on something else rather than trying to pick, to Jan's point, some priorities that we can all work together as a town. And I know you're working hard at this, Steve, but I think a lot of us as residents, we've heard a lot of talk about some things. We'd like to see some action. Like what, like northeast corner, what is happening on that corner?
You missed the update.
I did.
Yeah.
If you would have been here earlier, you would have heard it.
Okay, then I'll have to go back and listen to the meeting, but that's
Thank you.
fantastic. If there are, if there's a development on that, fantastic, but I feel like we should focus on some key things. We all know we're a sales tax driven town, and let's not get sidetracked on projects that may not even be fruitful in the long term. I guess that's just my concern.
I'm going to respond to that because, hello, I would like to respond to that. This has been
Yeah.
you can sit down. This has been a deliberate process brought to us by Steve, and we have gone over in some detail the northeast corner. We have gone over in some detail the northwest corner. We have gone over in some detail the town center. This has always been as part of that narrative, and he was bringing us up to date. We are not trying to distract you. We are trying to involve people, but to establish a baseline of understanding about what the key issues are. Town hall development is one of those issues, and it just irritates me that you think we're trying to distract you with some shiny ball when what in fact we're trying to do is educate the town as to what our opportunities and challenges are.
If I may be, but I never said that we were purposely trying to distract us. We appreciate, that's what we.
The shiny ball concept implies a lot.
Okay.
I apologize for using that analogy, but we are all here because we are concerned and we are interested in what's happening with the town.
Commissioner.
Yeah.
Yeah, Commissioner, I think this is a spirited debate and discussion. I think the spirited debate and discussion is better for a better venue for a spirited debate and discussion. And so I would like to, let's push on. I will start working on trying to put together something, and maybe instead of just talking specifically about this topic, if you're okay with that, we'll talk about the things that are on the economic development work plan that we have currently that's been approved. If that's something that's of interest to you guys, if we want to take that step back, in the same context, talk about
Well, Steve, you're obliged, when you got that approved by us, to come back and report quarterly.
Correct.
Okay, well, this is the June meeting, right?
Correct. It's the
Okay, this would be the meeting that you would report on. So yes, we've already approved that. You can bring that back at the appropriate time. And the June quarter, to me, sounds like the appropriate time.
yeah. So I mean, it's up to you guys how you
Mr.
want.
Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Well, I just want to, if there's any direction I can get to put the workshop together of what, do you want to do a topic discussion like this?
We have been over this and over this.
No, I mean I'm talking about the town hall stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Bring more of that. We have been over the fact that we would like to have a work table with microphones and cameras. We've discussed that. We've discussed that the economic development plan should be coming back to us quarterly for a report. Now, I don't make up the agenda. You have a lot of input into the agenda. You have input onto the work table, the microphones, and everything else. So let's get the show on the road.
Perfect. I'm glad we're on the same page.
We have a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, folks, for showing us.